Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Room. So we just solved a fun thing, and I'm kind of paused here for some reason. Don't really know why, but whatever. Here we go. We have constellations. It looks gorgeous. This is kind of what I want my bathroom to look like. I want like stars on the ceiling and stuff. I think it'd be really cool. Anyways, for today's list, I'm going to talk a little bit about my favorite Gothic movies and shows. So I really like Gothic things. Even though I think to some degree I definitely don't look goth, because I feel like there are many different like subgenres of goth and like many different Gothic aesthetics and stuff like that. I don't think I match with any of them. I'm like a t-shirt and jeans wearing kind of gal with like a sweatshirt because I like comfy stuff. Also, I super dig the color pink and purple, but I love black. So like I don't fit with the stereotypical goth thing, but inside I have a goth soul. I have such a goth soul. I am a sucker for Gothic things. It's so good. I love goth things. Anyways, point is that we're going to talk about some of my favorite Gothic, and some of them are not Gothic, but I think most of them are. Some of them I'm just mentioning for funsies. But let's start with The Awakening. So, like one trope that I think is pretty common in Gothic literature or fiction of any kind is typically you have a woman who is going to a new place. It's typically a house. It can be like a school or something like that, but it's typically a house. And she's there for some reason, whether it's a job or she's visiting. Think like Mexican Gothic, because that is a Gothic movie. I mean book. Sorry, not a movie. That's a Gothic book, and it's this woman who goes to this big mansion to try and like see about her cousin, right? And there's like all of this weird stuff that happens. Typically Gothic stuff doesn't, it kind of has supernatural things happening sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes there are just things that seem supernatural. Sometimes there are actually supernatural things happening, but the supernatural things that are happening are typically never the villain of the story, you know what I mean? So that's kind of like the main plot. There's also typically some kind of romance that happens in there. It doesn't have to happen, but there's typically some kind of romance that's happening with Gothic horror. Like the girl who is in the new place now falls in love with the master of the place, or like the dude who owns it, or whatever. Or even just a dude who happens to work in there. But typically it's something like that. There's a lot of like mystery, a lot of secrets. There's also typically ghosts. Even though for a lot of, not even a lot, but for some of it, there's not really supernatural things happening. For the ones that are happening, typically it's like ghosts or some other kind of supernatural thing. Any hoodles, I don't think I explained that very well, but whatever. We're moving on. So, to start with, we have The Awakening. The Awakening is a really awesome movie. I think it takes place in like the 1920s, something like that, early 1900s. And it's been a while since I've seen it, and I have only seen it once, but I remember really, really liking it and being like really engrossed in it and like captivated while I was watching it. I was like very into it. It had like a few different twists and turns where I was like, no. It was really good. So there are definitely ghosts in this one. There's definitely supernatural stuff happening in this one, but it's this woman who is trying to like disprove mediums or something like that, like spiritual mediums. Because it's probably, I don't know the 1920s that well, but it's probably during a time where like the occult kind of stuff is getting a little more popular, and there's maybe starting to be a lot more like fake mediums who know how to like fake things but make it look real. Anyways, so that's kind of like her job, is to weed them out. But for some reason, she gets called to like a boys' school, which originally was not a boys' school, but now it is. And like a kid died there. Some of the kids are seeing a ghost, and they think it's one of the kid that died. And so like she's called to investigate and kind of figure stuff out. I don't really remember the plot exactly. But like a lot of stuff happens. There's a ton of twists. She's definitely involved in what's happening there a little bit. And like it has a really kind of ambiguous ending from what I can remember too. So it was just really good. It was very good. Super good watch. Super aesthetic with like the 1920s-ish feel. If that's when it takes place. It might be the 1910s. I don't really know. But early 1900s is very cool. Crimson Peak. So in the last video I mentioned that I would be talking more about Crimson Peak. This is the one. Crimson Peak, like I said last time, is like one of my most favorite movies of all time. I absolutely love it. It is a love letter to Gothic horror, Gothic romance, Gothic literature in general. Super great. I absolutely love the story. I love the pacing. The costumes are beautiful. I saw some like behind the scenes stuff, and they really made sure to be as true to historical accuracy as they could, while also making things be like symbolic. So like Edith, for instance, has a bright yellowish kind of color palette, whereas the sister, I forget her name, I really don't remember her name, but the sister of Thomas has like a very dark sort of, what is it called, color palette. Edith has a lot of butterfly symbolism also, so still very bright, very alive. And then the sister is wearing like very old-fashioned kind of clothing that is out of style. They had like this one dress that they used twice, I think, that has leaves going down the spine, and it's supposed to make it look kind of skeletal. And like, I don't know, I just thought it was really cool, the costume design that they chose, and they just did it so good. Like, I feel like for the most part they were very true to historical accuracy, but they also put their artistic intent and symbolic intent in there, and that was just, it's so good. I appreciate it so much. Like, just so fantastic. Storytelling was amazing. Absolutely loved the ghosts. I kind of wish that there were more of the ghosts in there. Like, I kind of wish that they had a little bit more screen time. I wish that some of the mysteries of the ghosts that were in the movie, like, I kind of wish that they had their stories told in a little bit more detail, because you kind of get the gist of what happened to them, but I would like to know their details a little bit more. So I kind of want more of it, but I really, really liked them. I loved that, like, the red clay look and everything is just so good. Just so good. The only thing that I like, I love this movie, but I'm also incredibly heartbroken by it constantly, every single time I watch it, because I totally ship Edith and Thomas. I really feel like he loves her and he cares about her, and it's probably the first time that he's ever felt that for anyone, besides you know who. I don't want to spoil it if you haven't seen it. If you haven't seen it, please watch it. But yeah, I mean, you learn that, like, there's gonna be a little bit of spoilers, but I'm trying not to do too much. But you learn that, like, he and his sister were abused and kind of neglected in childhood, and this made him, I think, a little bit, like, the only word I can think of is the word soft, even though that feels wrong. I don't think that he's a soft boy. But, like, trauma will do things to you, and I think that he was traumatized, and then that made him easily manipulated. He's easily malleable to other people's whims and wishes, particularly his sister. And so he does a lot of things that he shouldn't be doing, and that I think in his heart he really doesn't want to do, but because it's his sister's intention, and it's something that his sister really wants to do, he just goes along with the flow because that's his only family that he has left. It's his only connection, and she is like that. So, yeah, and then Edith comes into the picture and she kind of fucks everything up because I think it's the first time in his life that he maybe feels truly seen, that he feels truly respected and loved, and I think he finds that very attractive also, and so he falls super hard for Edith, and like the way that it ends is just so tragic, and like I want them to be together, but with the context of everything that happens in the movie, even if what happened at the very end didn't happen, I don't think that they would be able to be together. Like, I don't think that their relationship would survive. I think Edith would leave. And I think he would probably pay for whatever crimes he's committed. And, like, it just wouldn't, I don't think it would work out. And so for me, I'm like, no matter what, no matter which way it goes, their relationship is so fucking doomed. And it makes me so sad because I'm like, I want him to have such a good character arc, a big arc, like redemption arc, because I feel like in his heart, in his soul, he is a good man. He's a good character. He just does these bad things because he's in a certain situation where he does it, and like he tries to redeem himself, and then shit goes down, and it's like, I feel for him. I love Thomas, but it's what happens in it is so fucked up, and it's so tragic. Man. So that's like the only reason why I don't really like Crimson Peak, because I'm like, there's no way that they could ever have a happy ending together. There's no possible way. Not in anything that's happened. There's no way. So it makes me really sad to watch it sometimes because of that, and I'm just like, the longing that I feel for them to work it out. I don't know, man. I feel very strongly about that. I really hope that in another life, in another realm somewhere, they find each other by natural means and they're able to actually be together, because I feel like they both deserve love, and I feel like they both really loved each other. But it's so good. It's such a good movie. I freaking love this movie. It's like one of my favorites. Oh my god, I will never stop gushing about it, and I will never get over it. It's oh, things are happening. What could that be? Well, now we're in a steampunky area. Speaking of, it's not really steampunk, but Penny Dreadful. So Penny Dreadful is a show that I have yet to finish. I have not finished this show at all. It's very much unfinished for me. I think it got canceled, right? Something like that. I don't know if there's like 2 seasons, 3 seasons, 4 seasons. I started watching season 2 and then I stopped because life happened, and I just haven't picked it back up yet. But now it's been so long since I've seen it that I really need to rewatch it. I just remember really enjoying it and being like really, really into it and wanting to binge watch it because I was just so enthralled with it. It has, I mean, Frankenstein, you've got Dracula, you've got Jekyll and Hyde, I think, is in there. It's called Penny Dreadful because there's a lot of the vibes and the characters from Penny Dreadfuls in ye old day, and so I really, really like it. I love the aesthetic. I love the way that they ended up tying all of these like Gothic literature kings together. Like they just did it so good, and I'm really curious to know like how it ends, and part of me is kind of scared to go back and rewatch it because I'm pretty sure it got canceled, so I don't know if the ending is going to be satisfying or not, because if there is no actual ending and it's left on a cliffhanger that is never resolved, I hate when that happens, and it's so heartbreaking. And I know that there's like comic books and stuff, and I could probably read them and it would maybe answer some questions, but like I'm really sad that the series got canceled, and I'm really sad that I haven't finished it yet. But it's one of those things where it's just, you know, a bunch of like the big name Gothic literature dudes all together combined into one, and I think they did a really great job with it. So I personally really like it. I definitely need to finish it. I'm sad it got canceled. The Haunting of Hill House. So The Haunting of Hill House kind of has that similar theme a little bit. Also The Haunting of Bly Manor, which I'll talk about next more, but they kind of have that similar thing of like either a single person or a family of people moving into a new house that is potentially haunted, right? So Haunting of Hill House came out first. It was so good. I remember like watching each episode, being on the edge of my seat, being a little bit terrified with a lot of them. There were a lot of very spooky, very scary moments that happened in the show. There's a lot of like secret hidden ghosts that I remember people talking about later, and like I would go back and try and find them, and I'd be like, oh my god, they are hidden. That's crazy. You can see them, like they're barely there in the background. That's insane. The detail that went into these things, it was so good. The ghosts also were incredibly spooky. The twist at the end, so good, but also really tragic and heartbreaking. Like Nell's storyline is so tragic, and it made me so freaking sad. I was absolutely heartbroken by her story, and also like completely blown away by it. I was so taken aback by it. It was absolutely insane. But yeah, I like that you have like one episode each basically that focuses on a particular family member, until they all kind of come together. And I don't know, it's just the way that they told the story was really great. The cinematography was really great. The one episode with the funeral, like they did a lot of, if not all of that, they did a lot of that in like one shot, and I was just really amazed by it. So like really, really good, super great, lots of really great scares in there too. Just such a good show. And it's really tragic too. And also like the way that it ends, I'm not gonna spoil it, but like the way that it ends is very mysterious, and like you don't know, you know. I don't know how to say that in any other way, but you just don't know. You just don't know. So anyways, Haunting of Bly Manor is another great one. Super amazed. This one definitely is more the whole like, this one's based on the turn of the screw, I think, which like in college I remember reading Turn of the Screw and being really bored with it. I don't remember if Turn of the Screw was supposed to be horror, like in its day, but if it was, to me it wasn't very horrifying. I remember being like super duper bored the whole time I was reading it. So when I had heard that they were doing that as the basis for The Haunting of Bly Manor, I remember being like really disappointed and kind of expecting it to suck, because I was just like, how can you make that story interesting? Because it just like, it seems like an interesting premise, but the way that they went about it was just so boring, and I hated it. So I both wasn't really expecting Bly Manor to be good, but at the same time, because I loved Hill House so much, and because they did Hill House so well, in my opinion, I was also expecting that Bly Manor was going to be good. So I kind of went into it with like mixed feelings, and I was pleasantly surprised. I think I actually like Bly Manor a little bit more than Hill House. The romance in it was so good. Also a little tragic, but like it was chef's kiss, so good. The little twists and turns were also really good in there. Like some of the people who are in there, I don't want to spoil anything, but like the secrets, and like, oh, they're just I don't know, man. There were just so many times where I was like, oh, no, oh my god, that's what was happening this whole time. Like, oh, I'm so surprised. Maybe I'm just a little blind to some of these things sometimes, because some things are really predictable and other things aren't. But to me, Bly Manor was not predictable enough for me. I was constantly surprised by it, and so I think that's part of the reason why I really enjoyed it too, because there's a ton of mystery with it. There's a ton of mystery with both of them, and like Hill House plays it out really slowly, and you can kind of guess what's happening, but it's nice to see what happens. So it plays out like really, really, really slowly until the very end when you get the conclusion. And Bly Manor, I don't remember it really doing that. It kind of does, but like it doesn't do it in the same way. But yeah, it was just super great. There were definitely some scary things about it, but I feel like Bly Manor was less scary and more creepy, whereas Hill House was definitely more creepy and scary. So I think people who were expecting more horror from Bly Manor were a little disappointed because it wasn't the most horrifying, but it was such a good story. They told it so well. Ugh, it was so good. Things Seen and Heard. So this one I really like. I don't think I would definitely put it in my favorites, even though it's in my favorites video right now. At the time that I wrote this, I definitely really, really liked it. Thinking back on it now, I'm like, yes, I really liked it. I don't know if I would consider it one of my favorite movies, but I will recommend it still. Things Seen and Heard, still a little bit with that Gothic theme of a family moving into a new home. Focuses on the woman and ghosts in the house. So, and these ghosts are very clearly trying to communicate something, and it's very Gothic in that sense too, where you have these ghosts, they're trying to communicate something to the woman living in the house, and they are not a threat. They are just messengers, and that's kind of the point from what I've seen, and that's kind of one of the things that I really love about Gothic literature too, and Gothic stories in general, is that, like, the ghosts are not evil spirits. The ghosts are not bad. They are helpful. They are messengers. They're just trying to help. They're good. And I kind of like that because I do believe in ghosts. And ghosts are kind of scary. And if I ever actually encounter a ghost in real life again, I will probably shit myself. But I don't fully trust ghosts in real life, but I like when they're good in fiction, is what I'm saying. I do like that. So yeah, they move into this new house. There's these ghosts. Something weird is happening with her husband. I'm not gonna get too much into it, because if I get too much into it, then it's gonna spoil it. But, like, I feel really bad for her kid, basically. And, like, it's not really much of a spoiler to say that she is dead. She's not dead at the beginning of the thing, but, like, it starts off with her being murdered. So, like, you know that she dies at the very, very beginning. It's not a spoiler. That's literally how it starts. Something happened to his wife, and then you see her story. Obviously, you don't know who killed her, although it's kind of predictable who killed her. Like, once you start seeing everything, you're like, of course. So, really, really good, though. Still really good. Kind of predictable, like I said, with a lot of things, but still really good. There's a lot of mystery that was happening. There's definitely a lot of, like, suspense and building up of things, and the ghosts are definitely trying to help her, you can tell, and it's really good. It's really good. It's also a little bit tragic because you know that she dies at the end. So, like, you're kind of watching, going like, boy, I do hope that she survives, while at the same time you're like, I already know she's not gonna, but, like, we're just seeing her story play out now. But the way that they did it was really good. It was a very enjoyable watch, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who wants to watch it. It's kind of like an unsolved murder kind of a thing, but also not, if that makes sense. I don't know. Just the way that they played it out is really good. The Call. So The Call is a Korean horror movie. I don't know that I would necessarily call it a Gothic horror movie, but in a way it's kind of Gothic, because it's the same thing about this woman going to this empty house. And, like, weird things start happening. But it kind of starts out being a little bit Gothic in nature, and then it ends up becoming, like, a weird kind of sci-fi time travel-y horror. Like, this one had crazy like twists and turns. Super crazy twists and turns. It was just insane. It was super insane. Also, I don't know what I'm doing here. I was just sitting there. But yeah, super crazy twists and turns. It starts off slow and, like, really subverts, like, what's happening. I don't know how to explain it, but, like, they do a really fantastic job at, like, flipping the whole thing on its head, and, like, it's so surprising, and there are definitely parts that are, like, really intense and, like, uncomfy to watch. It's just, oh my god, it's, like, so good. Also, it's got Park Shin-hye in it. I fucking love her. She's also one of my favorite actresses, Korean actresses. Love her so much. But, like, I would love for there to be a second one of these movies. If they wanted to make one, I would totally watch it. because this one was so good. And it has kind of a tragic ending too. Like, the ending is not by any means like a good ending, but it's also a good ending. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a good ending because it's not like a happy ending, but it's a good ending. And I'm just like, oh my god, I love The Call. It was so good. Highly recommend it. Such a good movie. That one probably could have gone on my other list of just horror movies, but whatever. It's on this list now. Victor Frankenstein. This one was really, really enjoyable for me. It had like a certain quality to it. I can't really describe it. Kind of Crimson Peak-esque. Also, it's like in the same time period, I think. Although I think Frankenstein is like 1800s though, like late 1800s, and Crimson Peak is like early 1900s. But like film quality wise, I mean, like the way that it was edited, the color palette, that kind of thing, it seemed like very similar. So just with the eyes, I really liked it. But I also liked that this story was told through the eyes of Igor. And we get to see Frankenstein with like a different perspective and through a different lens. And Igor's definitely more involved than I've seen him in any other Frankenstein story. So, like, also, I have no idea where the heck Igor comes from, honestly, because I don't think he's not in the original Frankenstein, from what I can recall. But it's really fun. It was super duper fun to watch. There's, like, some danger in it. It's also pretty reminiscent of the Portrait of Dorian Gray movie, which I will be talking about last, I think, on this list. But like, it seemed very similar to that in the way that the story was told, in the way that it was shot, the color palette, like it, also the time period. But this one has, oh god, what's his name? Harry Potter dude. Why am I blanking on his name? The guy that plays Harry Potter. Daniel Radcliffe. It's got Daniel Radcliffe in it. I love Daniel Radcliffe. He's great. He's a fantastic actor. I love the stuff that he's in, and I love that him and Elijah Wood, like two of my favorite weird actors. They just do whatever the heck they want, and I'm for it. I love it. So, anyways, Victor Frankenstein, really amazing. Super duper good. Freaking love this movie. Cannot recommend it enough. It's a very, like, casual kind of a movie, too, though, but super good. Also, Frankenstein's kind of a dick in this, but it makes sense because of the time period, but, like, also, he's kind of a dick in the main book, too, so it's totally fits his character. Let's see, next would be Dracula, the TV show. So, not the movie. I haven't actually seen the Dracula movie, the one with Winona Ryder in it. I have to watch it. It's on Hulu now, I think, so I should probably get to watching that. But I'm talking specifically the miniseries that came out, like, a few years ago. So this one, to me, was a very romantic with the capital R, as in The Romantics. It was a romantic and gothic dream miniseries for me. I absolutely loved it. Like, this was just an absolute masterpiece. I think it's only 4 episodes, but the episodes are like an hour and a half long, so it's like 4 mini movies. And like, it was just so good. Like, it gave me so many feels. There was a ton of mystery in it. They did really great at like playing with the source material and then applying it to a more modern day like system later on in the show. I love who Van Helsing was, who they made Van Helsing. I love everything about this show. I need to watch it again. It was just so good. It was so good. And like, I cried at the end of it because it made me feel all of the feels. And it was just such a romantic ending. So good. So Dracula is definitely one of my favorites. I gotta watch it again. Also, this puzzle was really confusing me. I thought it was kind of gonna be like a Rubik's Cube, but like, nothing was happening. So you'll see me struggle here with this for a bit. I get the hang of it later, don't worry. Okay, From Hell, which is an older movie. And I haven't seen it in years, so like I kind of remember it, but I also kind of don't. I remember watching it as a kid when I wasn't supposed to be watching it. And being like, whoa, this is a terrifying, also really great, kind of gothic movie. And I call it gothic just because it's during the same time, because it has to do with Jack the Ripper, I'm pretty sure. Honestly, like I said, it's been years since I've watched it. I didn't even look up a synopsis of it. I just remember Jack the Ripper being part of it somehow. And Johnny Depp is in it. Love Johnny Depp. So, yeah. I don't have a ton to say about this one, just that, like, I remember it being one of those ones that I really enjoyed. And it seemed to me to kind of fit the gothic theme a little bit, particularly because of the time period that it's in. So that's From Hell. I still like the movie, even though I haven't seen it in a long time. And speaking of Johnny Depp, let's move on to Sleepy Hollow. Sleepy Hollow is, of course, going to be on this list, because how could it not be on any goth person's list? I mean, I'm sure not every person, a particularly gothic person, loves Sleepy Hollow. I feel like it's not for everyone, but, like, it's really good. It's so good. It's like super... How do you describe it? I was gonna say it's super artsy, but artsy isn't quite the word, but, like, artful, maybe. I don't quite know, but it's just really good. It's a really good movie. So I don't think I need to say too much about Sleepy Hollow, though, because most people have seen Sleepy Hollow, right? Unless maybe you are not as old as I am. Does that make me old? I don't know, but Sleepy Hollow, recommended if you haven't seen it yet. It's really fun, really good. It's got the mystery, it's got some witchiness in it, it's a little bit horror, of course, because it's got, like, the Headless Horseman. It's Christopher Walken, like, come on. It's so good. And Christina Ricci is in it, so, like, chef's kiss, perfect. I love it. Beautiful Creatures is next. So, Beautiful Creatures the movie is based on the book series, and I will never read the book series. I can already tell you that, because after seeing the movie, I had to look up the book series to be like, do I want to read the book series? It's 4 books, and I really love the movie, but when I read the synopsis for every single book in the book series, I was like, books 1 and maybe 2 sound interesting, but books 3 and 4 sound like it's droning on at that point, and I don't want to start a series if I know that I'm not going to like it. So I'm never going to read the book series. But the movie was fantastic, and from what I had read, it seems to me like they included elements from all of the books into the movie, so maybe they were already planning on, like, not making a series out of the movie. I would have loved if they, like, made a second or third movie from this. Honestly, I would prefer this to Twilight. Don't hate me. I remember reading Twilight. Twilight is so problematic. Like, there's so many issues with it. I'm not really gonna get into it, but let's just say that, like, I appreciate the fan base of Twilight. And I love the Twilight fan base, but I hate Twilight. That's what I'm gonna say about it, okay? Me personally, despise Twilight. Love the fans, love the fan base. I love the memes. I love that the fans have fun with Twilight. So I can appreciate that Twilight exists because of the community that it built. I think the community around Twilight is fantastic. But continuing on, I would have so much rather had Beautiful Creatures as a series rather than Twilight. I think it would have been cooler, and they're not really comparable. They're kind of comparable, but also not, because one is vampires and one is witches, even though they don't like to be called witches, but whatever. They're not really comparable, but if you were gonna have, like, a supernatural romance that was also very angsty and stuff, like, Beautiful Creatures would have been so much better, in my opinion. So first time I watched Beautiful Creatures, absolutely loved it. Super duper loved it. Second time I watched Beautiful Creatures, I remember really not liking it. I was maybe in a different headspace. I I don't even know, but I know for sure I was probably in a very different headspace, and the second time I watched it, I really didn't like it. I decided to give it another watch, and this was like a couple weeks ago at the point that I'm recording this, and I loved it again. Absolutely loved it. I want more of it. I want there to be a sequel, which is why I looked up the books, so that I could be like, what happens next? And that's when I discovered that, like, they really just took a bunch of elements from all of the books and put them together into one thing. Which is totally fine, they can do that. But it also made me a little disappointed because it like reassured that we were likely never going to get a sequel for the movies. Would have been great though. So it's definitely a love story more than anything, but it's this girl who on her 16th birthday, her powers will either be claimed for the light or the dark. Also, this part in the game kind of ticked me off because I'm like, it matches up. What is wrong? I'm not zoomed in enough is what's wrong. Anyways, so her powers, she's either going to be claimed for the light or the dark, and there's like some kind of curse on her family where all of the women somehow get called to the dark side, which in the movie doesn't entirely make sense to me because she has an aunt that is light. She has light magic. And the grandma doesn't seem to be dark, and like there's like some little issues, like continuity issues in the movie that I didn't really like watching it, but it seems to me like there's some, that's what it sounded like, is that there was some kind of curse with her family where all of the girls would succumb to dark magic. They wouldn't have light magic. And then for the men get to choose themselves, I guess, whether they want to fight for the light or the dark, and the women don't have a choice, which I kind of also didn't really like that part, but that's just part of it. Meanwhile, she's still 15, and she has like numbers on her wrist somewhere, and that's like her countdown for her birthday, and she ends up falling in love with this human dude, and like there's all this stuff happening, and it's, I don't know, it's a really good kind of angsty, sort of like really cute little romance that also deals with magic and all this stuff. I don't know, it's really good. Plus there's like the evil mother, and she's like trying to tempt her daughter to the dark side and all this other stuff, and Emmy Rossum is in it. Freaking love her. So like, just a really good movie. It's a really beautiful movie too. Super dig the aesthetic. I have no idea what to call the aesthetic. My brain keeps saying like it's Swamp Witch aesthetic, because they're like, they're in like, I think I'm gonna get this wrong, but they're in like Mississippi or something like that, where there's like a lot of the bayous, and I feel like I don't know anything. I've never been to the center south of the United States. I haven't really been anywhere in the US. So I don't really know anything except for like what I've seen. Think like the Skeleton Key. Like they're in that kind of house with like marshes and that kind of stuff. And so it has like that feel to it. It's really good. Anyways, Practical Magic is next. Practical Magic, I feel like I don't have to explain that one too much. We all know and love Practical Magic, right? I mean, it's just an amazing movie. And the aesthetic is amazing. Super love it. So, yeah, that one is definitely on my list. Absolutely love it. And then we have The Portrait of Dorian Gray. Uh-oh, our lens is blinking. But yeah, then we have the Portrait of Dorian Gray. Super fast. I remember the book being really great, and the movie felt a bit more risque for me. It seemed like maybe like the book was a little more subdued with some of its language, whereas the movie was like outright with a lot of what was actually happening, I think, in the book. So sometimes the movie made me a little uncomfy because of that, but like it got the message across, and they did a really good job at like adapting it. And it's also really just tragic because of one of the characters' deaths, and like Dorian Gray's an absolute asshole. But yeah, it was really good. It's kind of gothic, but kind of not, because it doesn't have like the gothic tropes, but it's still a little goth. It's mostly horror in a different sense. But anyways, yeah, recommend the Portrait of Dorian Gray movie. It's really good. That was my kind of gothic show and horror movie list. Yeah, that one. Thanks for watching. Bye!